So hello everyone and welcome to this special interview by OpenAI Forum at GoSimAir Paris 2025 and PyTorch Day France. Today we are privileged to have Dr. Catherine Arnett from EleutherAI with us. So welcome, Catherine. Before we dive deep into our conversation, I'd also like to remind our audience to follow GoSim's official X and YouTube channels for more exciting content and updates from this conference. So please take a brief introduction of yourself.
So my name is Catherine Arnett. I'm an NLP researcher at EleutherAI. I just finished my PhD in linguistics from UC San Diego, and my research focuses on multilingual NLP.
I see. So, Catherine, we know your academic journey is quite unique. So, starting with Chinese studies and linguistics at the University of Edinburgh. So, could you share with us what initially drew you to linguistics and especially to the fascinating world of the Chinese language?
So I went to a Spanish language school, and so in the U.S. So I already started from a very young age learning languages, and then developed an interest. So then studied Latin and some other languages. And when I started university, I wanted to learn a new language. So I just picked Chinese because it seemed exciting, and then that kind of set me on a course. Yeah.
So you already learned three languages at that time: Spanish, French, and Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So, any particular challenges or interesting stories while learning Chinese?
Just a lot of hours, mostly learning to read and write. I found that was one of the main draws to learning Chinese, is I was really fascinated with the writing system. So I spent a lot of hours just copying characters and memorizing a lot of those. Yeah.
I see. So how did that experience subtly influence your worldview or your understanding of language itself?
Yeah, I think I just have a fundamentally multilingual view of language, and Chinese and English, my native language, are so different that it began to really deeply help me to deeply understand how different languages can be, and thinking about how that affects learning new languages, how it affects language technologies like language models, all kinds of things. Yeah.
I see. So in your homepage, you said you have been to China to have so many cities travel. So is that happens in a short time, or you have a long-term traveling?
I was living in Hangzhou for one academic year. So whenever we didn't have class, then I was off traveling somewhere.
I see. So later you pursued a PhD in linguistics at US San Diego, so specializing in computation social science. So how did this transition occur from studying language itself to using computing methods to research language?
Yeah, it wasn't a very straightforward journey. So I first started in a subfield of linguistics called psycholinguistics, which is about understanding how people process and produce language. That involves doing behavioral experiments and trying to probe what kinds of things people understand and what factors influence their understanding. And I was studying a phenomenon in Chinese called reduplication. And then gradually that changed into wanting to use those methods to understand how language models work, and not just for Chinese, but for all languages.
I see. So what was the catalyst that led you to dedicate yourself to the field of NLP?
I had a sort of change in advising situation. And so I was visiting some different labs, and I was visiting a lab in the cognitive science department at my university, and they were just reading papers every week about language models. So I would do my best to keep up, and then eventually I started understanding, and then eventually I started developing all these different questions I had about how they worked, and then that was kind of it. I got hooked.
Yeah. So for my memories of an NLP, I first knew these words is during the AI winter. So everybody is saying that NLP is dead, NLP is no end. So in your memories, is how it goes through to the NLP history, and
Yeah, I guess so. This interest started in 2021. So
yeah,
it was before ChatGPT kind of
yeah,
really
before
changed
ChatGPT,
everything. But like GPT-3 existed, and there were some certainly exciting models, like nothing really
see,
like what we have. But like
yeah,
it was coming at it from the perspective of there's something interesting here. Like it doesn't seem human-like. It's not very convincing at the moment. But there's some real like promise here. There's some very interesting questions we can ask about like how these systems are learning language and how they use language.
So how has your theoretical knowledge in linguistics helped you understand and solve NLP problems?
Yeah, I think like one of the kind of like big projects where I felt like this all came together was a paper that I published earlier this year at Coling, where I was looking at whether like certain typological features, so the way like certain sort of like high level grammatical features of languages, whether that affects language models' ability to learn a language well. And there have been some prior work suggesting that there are these differences, and this is like an area that I've always been interested in from the linguistic side. And I think that, that drew me to the question to begin with, and I think it helped me design like some very careful experiments that kind of led to the conclusion that actually that's not necessarily what's going on. There are differences, but maybe that those aren't the reason. It all ended up coming down to something about data set size instead. So I feel like even though the result wasn't like a very linguistics-y result, coming from that perspective at least was more convincing to me that that it wasn't a linguistics-y answer. It was as a data answer. Yeah.
So in your research, byte premium is a very critical and novel concept. So could you explain it to our audience in simple terms?
Yeah, so we basically, we were trying to kind of figure out how we were going to conceptualize comparable data set sizes across languages. And it started from this observation that in UTF-8 encoding, certain scripts use different number of bytes for characters. So Latin characters are all represented with a single byte, but Chinese characters are represented often with 2 or 3 bytes. Characters in, say, Burmese or Khmer represented with 3 or 4 bytes. And this means that the data set size for those languages with, this is the byte premium, is what we call this effect, with the higher number of bytes needed to represent text, it means that if you train your language model on 1 gigabyte of text from that language, it's actually effectively half or even 1/4 of that data, which can help us understand some of the low performance that we're seeing, especially in those big, massively multilingual models.
I see. So back to the history, before you introduce this concept, how did the research community typically measure multilingual data set size?
Well, most people use token count. Sometimes in like the reports for these like multilingual models at the time, we were looking at XGLM or something like that. They actually do report the data set size in bytes or gigabytes. But really, people often measure in token count because that's that model specific. That tells you how many batches and so on. The problem is that we kind of took a step back from that because number one, we were looking at setting data set size before we had even trained a tokenizer. So you can't do token count if you don't have a tokenizer yet. And so this kind of simple question actually about deciding our data set size for training our tokenizer led us on this like big side project, basically.
Okay. So in prompting the consideration of byte premium in actual model development, so what do you see as the biggest obstacles or challenges?
I think maybe not obstacles, but questions.
Yeah.
We trained some models where we basically like accounted for these byte premiums by scaling the training data according to them. But there's an open question. Okay, you're scaling up the training data, so now the compute is not held constant. So really, if we're getting to some questions about comparability across languages, like if we account for data set size, now we're not accounting for compute, and how can we keep all of these things constant? Like right now we can't. So maybe that's an obstacle, or maybe those are questions. Yeah.
I see. So your talk at GoSim today in the PyTorch Day focuses on the best practices of open multilingual LM evaluation. So currently, what do you believe is the most pressing issue to address when evaluating multilingual large language models?
Yeah, well, it's not something that I'm going to talk about too much or that I can currently fix. But basically just the availability of benchmarks is by far the biggest obstacle that I face. So I'll talk about how to carefully select benchmarks according to some important considerations. But when I've gone to do this in the past, I mostly just come up with there aren't any benchmarks, or there certainly aren't benchmarks that meet these best practices I'm going to talk about. So at Eleuther, one of the big things that I'm working on is developing more multilingual evaluations.
I see. So talk about benchmarks. So how can we ensure that evolution metrics truly reflect a model's capabilities in real world, diverse linguistic contexts, rather than just gaming, obviously cheating, specific benchmarks?
Yeah, I mean, I think drawing from a diverse set of benchmarks is important. Some of the things I'm going to talk about today are the importance of not using machine translated benchmarks. You're essentially adding in all the noise from machine translation into the benchmark, especially for lower resource language where the translation quality is going to be lower. Yeah, and also just making sure that all the implementation details and all the reporting details are as precise as possible, so that you're making judgments. Like, say you're doing model selection, you're comparing two models. You want to make sure that those, to the extent that the benchmark is measuring what you want it to measure, that you're even reading the results of the benchmarks correctly.
I see. So for those low resource languages, how or what are the practical difficulties in creating high quality and culturally sensitive evaluation benchmarks? So how can the community collaborate to overcome them?
Yeah, so this is actually something we're doing now on we organize everything at Eleuther on our Discord, which is open to anyone. We have 30,000 members. So the big thing is just this big international cross institution collaboration. Because if you think about making a data set or an evaluation for 10 languages, you at the minimum need 10 experts or one expert for each of the languages, but ideally more. And so really you just need experts in all the languages so that they can think of what are the things that are culturally relevant in my context. I can't necessarily even know what those are without that deep collaboration with experts. Yeah.
A bit like MLE, or you just talk about the experts?
Human experts. Human experts. To help, even just understanding an existing evaluation. What about this is suitable for my language just to translate, and what maybe needs to be adapted?
I see. So another significant piece of your research explores the curse of multilingualism. So in what specific ways does this curse manifest?
Yeah, so the curse of multilinguality is essentially a phenomenon where at some point adding data from other languages doesn't improve performance for your target language, and in fact it may harm performance. Which essentially happens because the model reaches its capacity. It can't well represent information for all those languages. So in considering these massively multilingual models, this has come up a few times yesterday here at GoSim, these models like Llama or something are trained on 95% English data.
Yeah.
So like how much of the model capacity is really left for all those other languages, which, only get a little bit of the training data, but also like how much of the model essentially do they get? Probably not very much. So yeah, those are kind of like considerations when training multilingual models.
What role does model capacity play in this issue?
I mean, essentially just I guess the fundamental issue is you're not going to train a model that's going to work really well for every language. I'm not even sure, well, we don't have the data for it. I'm not even sure to what extent like scaling up the model really helps. Like we really just need to focus on smaller models that are dedicated for specific languages or maybe small groups of languages, so the model can specialize a little bit and rather than like having small parts of the models like represent information from different languages.
So maybe each country must have the human experts. Like in the GoSim Spotlight, there's a Polish language data set.
Yeah, we need Polish-centric language models, not necessarily monolingual Polish models, but models which are built with the purpose of maximizing Polish performance.
I see.
Llama isn't going to get you there necessarily, even though it can generate text in Polish, maybe not that great. Yeah.
So is it possible to turn these curves into a kind of blessing? So perhaps through specific training strategies that enable positive knowledge transfer between different languages?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a paper we presented at NLP last year, we showed that actually for low resource languages, they often do get this, and we call it the blessing of multilinguality, where they can actually really successfully leverage transfer from especially related languages. So maybe not always English, but maybe some language that's relatively similar. They do benefit a lot. And so one of the things I'm looking at now is how can we create the best circumstances for this to happen, to overcome the lack of data that we have for many languages.
So if we want broader language coverage in models, how can we avoid or mitigate the negative impacts of these curves on the performance of specific languages, especially high resource ones or those with unique structures?
Yeah, I mean, I think the solution is essentially just not to expect that one model is going to do it all. Like, I think we have the tools to train at least better models for most languages, and it's not necessarily going to be like a fine tune of Llama. It might be starting with a smaller model, pre-training from scratch, and really specializing in a language. Yeah, we trained some small 100 million parameter models last year, and in some cases they beat Llama 8B with 80 times smaller. That really highlights
the Goldfish models.
The Goldfish models, exactly. So yeah, I think to us the lesson there was we need to really rethink under what conditions we actually expect the best performance. That we can maybe start smaller and think about pre-training from scratch and setting up the tokenizer in an efficient way, and these kinds of things, that might actually be a better starting point than an existing model.
I see. So in an era increasingly dominated by large models, so what role do these small but beautiful models like Goldfish models play in research and applications?
Well, I mean, first of all, they make research way more accessible. So I was recently doing an experiment with the Goldfish models. I can run them locally on my computer. I did my entire experiment in 2 hours, just on my laptop. And the access that grants to researchers that don't have access to huge supercomputer clusters is massive, and showing that like we can do valuable research at that scale. It's not the only scale that's important, but it can couple nicely with these larger scale experiments. So I think that's huge, and it allows like a nice playground for us to test without wasting a ton of money, and that can inform our larger scale experiments in the future.
Yeah. So when dealing with the massive, diverse multilingual data, so what are the biggest challenges in identifying and mitigating bias and harmful information?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, two of the biggest problems with the multilingual data are quality and toxicity. Actually, language identification is not a solved problem. So that's something that I'm hoping to contribute. Common Crawl has a really exciting project right now, trying to improve language identification. And then, toxicity is a big problem. We did a project last year where we used synthetic generation to train a dedicated toxicity classifier. It was limited to European languages, so like scaling to more lower resource languages, I'm not sure that method would be applicable. Basically just the lower resource you go, the fewer reliable tools you have, and I don't have any easy answers. Like we need better tools, essentially. These tools that I think in the English dominant NLP space we think of as outdated or solved, but they're really not solved, yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at EleutherAI. So what does the open science mean to you personally?
Yeah, well, someone said it yesterday, I can't remember one of the sessions, that there's no open science, like science is open.
Yeah.
So we can't be doing science without it being open. And, we talk, me and my collaborators talk a lot about how, if we don't have access to the model weights, if we don't have access to the training data, how can we be sure that whatever we're seeing isn't the result of a hidden system prompt, isn't the result of contamination in the training data? Like, we just can't learn anything unless we actually have access to absolutely the full stack. What's the training code like? What's the reinforcement learning pipeline like? We need to know all of that. Otherwise, we're really not doing science, I think.
I see.
Yeah.
So how do you think a balance should be struck between open data and responsible AI?
Yeah. I think what I have been kind of involved with over the past year, also my previous role at a startup called PlayUs, and continuing to do at Eleuther, is thinking about how to make responsibly, like permissively licensed data sets and scaling up. Right now, they're not very big data sets in the grand scheme of things, but I feel really confident that we can build on this research. Like we can, we're setting progress maybe back in terms of data set size right now, but it is responsible, it is ethical, it is sustainable to be doing this way. We're not going to run into legal problems. We're not going to ruin relationships in various language communities. At least that's the goal. And I think that's the approach that I think is appropriate and that I'm trying to contribute to.
So there are many hot discussions in the AI field right now, so such as AI alignment, the society impact of LLM on jobs or educational, and the potential regulatory issues. So from your perspective in multilingual research, so what's the specific dimensions of those topics deserve special attention?
Yeah, to be honest, I feel often in the multilingual space like we're sort of several years behind. There's critical issues with pre-training that I think need more work, where I think mainstream NLP has moved past. We're in the post-training, we're in agents, in mainstream
and
NLP.
Reinforcement learning, yeah.
We, honestly, for some of the languages that I've worked with, we're at bigram level language performance. So we can't possibly be thinking about agents and RL, right?
Yeah.
We haven't done pre-training yet.
Yeah.
So I feel like in some ways I feel a bit isolated from some of the trends. I do keep up, it is very exciting, but in terms of a lot of the things I'm doing, we're building data sets, building evaluations, pre-training small models. It's pretty disconnected, I think, from the hot
slow
topic.
down, yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of nice for me personally. I feel like I can exist at a slower pace, do things a little bit more intentionally and carefully, and unfortunately, no one's scooping me where even though I'm behind maybe in some areas. But there's a pretty strong community in this like multilingual area. So, it's small but vibrant area.
Yeah, there's a popular article these days. It is an OpenAI researcher. It says this is the second half of the AI, but actually for some languages it's only still in the first half.
Yeah, exactly. The vast majority of languages are in the first half, or maybe honestly some languages have less data than we had for English in the 1970s.
I see.
So we're really behind, and it's exciting to try to catch up.
So as models become increasingly capable, so discussions about whether AI could develop something akin to mind or consciousness or self-awareness are sometimes heard. So what are your thoughts on this?
I did have, I must say I'm a little skeptical of maybe some of these like further like AGI kind of claims or concerns. But really, like, I think maybe a criteria of an AGI or ASI or something would really be something that does work for all languages. I think that's like a goal that we should have, and we are so far from it that I would be, quite skeptical that anything in the near future is really going to be able to do that well. So. As I said, I'm kind of maybe like quite a bit far back on some of the trends in terms of the questions that I'm working on, but that's maybe my thoughts on that.
Yeah. So in the AI field, we would say there's two kinds of people. They believe the mind comes from the different way from the brain. So one of they say the vision, like the first AI, like Fei Li, she made the ImageNet, and then the AlexNet. They say the mind is come from the eye. Yeah, everything, the baby, when you're born, you see everything, and then you have the mind, have the understanding this world. But the other side, they say the mind is come from the text, come from the language. Mm-hmm. So which one will you prefer, the visual or language?
I'm a linguist, so I really feel what I have to contribute to the field is in the domain of language. I think in terms of like what is human-like or achieving some kind of more human-like performance or behavior should probably be multimodal. Like I do think the multimodal results so far are very exciting, and the embodied AI is of course very exciting. It raises many questions, many concerns, but I don't know that I have much to contribute as a linguist, but I think we as humans are not going solely on language or solely on our embodied multimodal experience. So it should be all of them, yeah.
I see. So does AI ethics and the value alignment become more complex in a multilingual context? So how can we ensure AI system respect the values from different cultures?
Yeah, this has been a very vibrant topic in the Eleuther Discord recently, and I've been working with some community members. I think like recently, maybe in the last 6 months, I have personally observed an explosion of benchmarks that are evaluating exactly this. Like I think we are at the point with some of these more like state-of-the-art systems where we can start to talk about things being culturally adapted. Like the problem is that in a multilingual context, models are worse, data sets are more scarce, so you're just working with less, but it's obviously just as important. And so you just have to think creatively, I think, about how to use what's there. I think for people who are members of language communities, it's a great opportunity for them to really contribute their experience and their perspective to benchmarks, to data sets, and so on.
I see. So we just talk about some languages behind. So how do you think the energy consumption issue of AI poses a challenge to the developer of inclusive and credible multilingual AI?
What are the challenges of sorry?
Yeah, there's so many languages, but every language needs resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you think the energy consumption issue of AI poses to a challenge?
I mean, yeah, again, maybe have like a different experience with this.
Yeah.
Like, I think because data sets are smaller and everything, like, we have to scale down. Like, I
see.
can't train like bigger models. So like, actually, the beauty of that is like we are already really working on like resource efficient, small scale, like we're basically already addressing sort of climate issues. We're addressing edge device like use and things with like some of the projects I've done. So I wouldn't say it's something I'm feel like that I have that much to contribute on, but like we're kind of already addressing, I think, naturally in just the like by being constrained resource wise.
Yeah. So that's all the questions about the technology. So we come back to the GoSim conference. Is this your first time in Paris for the GoSim conference, or could you share your initial impression of the city and the atmosphere at the GoSim conference?
This is not my first time in Paris. I've been several times before. But yeah, this has been like in terms of the GoSim experience so far, I feel like it's been really nice to see people from like very different areas. Normally I attend academic NLP conferences, and I feel that I work in a very similar kind of, have a very similar job to most people. But here I'm talking to people about infrastructure, about applications, about all kinds of things. So yeah, my experience has been like really like broadening my perspective on what people are doing and what problems people are facing.
Yeah. So what are your observations of the AI open source community in Europe? So compared to communities in MA or other regions, so what are its unique characteristics or different developer dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was discussed in some of the sessions, but things like the Euro HPC, which is the program where sort of national, like different countries or even the EU sort of have these big supercomputer centers, and they distribute compute, based on these applications. I think like having research be based in these like communal facilities, these public facilities, like orients people already towards open source a little bit more than in the US maybe, where I think people are more used to using their private clusters. So yeah, I think things are structured here fundamentally in a way that's just a little bit more oriented towards open source. But like my collaborators are everywhere on almost every continent. So like to me, this is also my community. Like in some ways, it's really not different because these are like a lot of my collaborators are here in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Actually, I want back to that question about the consciousness and the mentality and awareness. So actually, it's not about AI; it's about philosophy questions. So where do you think consciousness come from? Because part of the AI researcher thinks it's come from the image from the eye. Yeah, because the first thing you see is the world, and there's no text, no language, and everything you understand is by the eye. So, and another part of the AI research, I think, is by the words. The difference with human and animals is the language, right? So, where do you think the human consciousness or mentalities come from?
I mean, I think this point about like the difference between human and animals does seem to be language. I mean, animals do have very robust communication. There's some very interesting research going on now about decoding whale and dolphin communication. Like, it's quite complex, but yeah, humans, we have something unique, I think. I will push back on that, actually humans, we start learning language from before we're born. We can hear in the womb, so we do not experience anything before language, actually. So I think it is difficult to really disentangle these things. But as a linguist, I would like to say there is something unique about language that allows us to really, I mean, first of all, to collaborate and to like share our ideas, but also shaping our thoughts and allowing us to develop really complex ideas that would absolutely not be possible without language.
I see. So as Gosim AI Paris draws to be a close today, so what's our hopes and suggestions for future development of Gosim or for collaboration with the global open source AI community?
I mean, probably just I think as it continues to exist and there are more iterations, growing the community of people who are like coming, and I guess every iteration will have different like group of attendees, which will be add some nice diversity. Yeah, I think just having more people come from more different organizations and meeting each other here.
I see. So thank you so much, Catherine, for your insights and inspiration today. So we hope our audience has found it valuable. So for audience members who wish to learn more about your work or connect with you, what are the best channels to find you?
I usually post all my work on Blue Sky and Twitter, and my Google Scholar also has everything. So there's not many Catherine Arnett. So yeah, Catherine Arnett NLP will get you to all of my accounts.
The most unique. So please continue to follow Gosim's official X and YouTube channels as well as OpenAI Forum. So for more exciting content and the new updates. Thank you.